Hi everyone, this is Zoph. You're watching Simply SCAdian, no title required. A weekly show where we talk to people who have not attained peerage in the SCA because they have something that we want to hear about um, too, just as much as there are the dukes and the duchesses and all them other highfalutin folks. I'm going to hand things off to my fabulous co-host, Lucas, while I do tech girl stuff. Take it away, Lucas.
Hey everybody, it's good to be back. So let me just say once again, the mission statement of Simply SCAdian, no title required, is that we want to hear from the folks in the SCA who haven't gained their peerage yet for whatever reason, whether they're working towards it, whether it's something that is not in the cards for them, but they still are so knowledgeable in their particular area. So whether that's fighting, fencing, archery, ANS, service, whatever it is. And again, I always come back to baking, venting, brewing, any of those things. I have learned so much in my time on the show. Now, if you know somebody that you think we should talk to, let's remind you, you can get to the Facebook page. There is a questionnaire on the Facebook page you can fill out, and you can recommend somebody to us from your neck of the woods. We want to hear from people from all parts of the known world. Once again, we're mid realm and East Kingdom, and we know a lot of people there, but we'd love to hear from people outside of that. And your recommendations make that happen. In fact, your recommendations made that happen tonight, because our guest was recommended to us, and we'd like to welcome her to the show. So please join me in welcoming Celeste De Montmorency. She joined the SCA in 1995. Lived in the barony of Eldern Hills in the kingdom of I'm going to say it wrong, but on Steoria, for 5 years. I still said it wrong. Upon joining the SCA, she took the office of Hospitaller and Chatelaine for the barony, though she was new herself. Needing help with newcomers, she created a mentoring program with the barony and eventually created a series of classes that she taught during those first meetings. She received her first award in 96, the Order of the Domestic Goddess of Eldern Hills, for her work in preparing a feast. She received her AOA in 98, served in the office for 4 years before giving up the local office and moving to Namron. She has been everywhere. She took I'm skipping around here because this is long. We're gonna get her to talk about it. You don't want to hear me. From 2001 to 2006, she bounced around from Namron to I'm gonna say it wrong again. I just learned how to say it. Say it for me. Bison. It's Wiesenfjord. I want to say Bison, but Wiesenfjord and Skogar. She's received the Saber Thistle for costuming, a Sable Crane for service, served as a title bard, and received the Star of Merit for service. Currently, she's in the Kingdom of Meridies. She lives in the Shire of Crimson River and has acted as Chatelaine, Chronicler, Herald, and Seneschal of Crimson River, and pretty much done it all. She's been inducted into the Order of the Poet Laureate from Meridies, and now she's apprenticed to Duchess Katrina of Iron Mountain. And Celeste, we welcome you to the show. How are you tonight?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Celeste, the first thing we ask every guest on the show is, how did you find the SCA?
I was in college. This actually found it in 1990. So 1990, 91, I was in college and I had a friend that was in the SCA. So what happened was that I was kind of pulled into leadership for my residence hall. And I had an idea that I wanted to have a ball, like a fall dance. So I convinced my friends who were also in leadership of the hall. So my friend who was actually the president of my hall and then the president of the men's hall and his vice president, I convinced them that we could have this fall dance. And I wanted to name that dance Back to Camelot. So the president of the men's hall actually happened to be in the SCA, and he said, "Oh, if we're going to have a medieval theme, we should have the SCA come out and do a demo." And I didn't know what he was talking about, but I agreed, and we had the dance, and the Barony of Namron actually came to the dance, and they taught us some of the English country dances, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. I kicked my shoe across the circle, but I got it back, and I had a lot of fun. So after that, I went to Medieval Fair in Namron, or Norman anyway, because it's actually put on by the city. So I went to the Norman Medieval Fair with him. I met some people in the SCA there. We went to an SCA meeting. He handed me the Namron plume, but he didn't explain what all of the membership, all of those numbers on the membership application versus 20 at the time, $25 here, $25 there, all of that. Well, he didn't explain it. So I added all of those numbers up, thought I had to pay all of that. And I called and I asked him, okay, where do you get the costumes then? Because I figured if I'm going to pay, $300 or $400 a month, a year anyway, to be in this organization, then gosh, they should provide me the costumes, right? So I called him and said, where do you get the costumes from? And he said, oh, well, you have to make them or you have to buy them. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, screw that. So it wasn't until after I got out of college and I went back home to Lawton, Oklahoma, that one of my friends from high school, her name is Beth, and she was in the SCA at the time. And we were talking and I wanted to go spend the night at her house. And she just said, well, the only time that we're in town is when we go to SCA meetings. She kept asking me to go with her. And for a long time, I refused because I didn't want to get involved and not be able to actually pay for the membership. So she did finally convince me to go. And it was a planning and gripes meeting. And planning and gripes, sometimes in Eldon Hills, they refer to that as the curse of the newcomer. So I went to this first meeting of the month, which was a planning and gripes meeting. And the Baron, who at the time was Artorius at Caradoc, started griping. It was his gripe about membership, about how it was only $25 a year. And gosh, you can give up a cup of coffee or you can forego one dinner out just to go ahead and get your membership in. So come on, people, and get your membership in. And I thought, $25 a year, that's it? Okay, I can do that. And so that's when I joined the SCA. I know that was long, but that's what my story is.
No, that's fine. So then how long between you joining and you taking up service?
Well, less than a month.
Wow.
Well, what happened was I honestly actually had no intention at the time of taking on service. I was already in about 3 or 4 other organizations outside of the SCA, and I was president of 2 of them. So I had no intention of taking on any kind of leadership role or anything like that in the SCA. And the person that was the chatelaine before, I found out later, had just decided that I was going to be her predecessor. So they started taking applications for the office at the very next meeting that I went to, which was the next week. And they kept applications open and they wouldn't close applications, even though some other people had applied for the office. But it was because they had already decided that I was going to be it. So I didn't put in an application and I didn't put in an application and I didn't put in an application. And then a few weeks later, a couple of my friends sat me down and said, hey, they're waiting for you to put in an application and this is why. So I put in the application, they closed the applications and they gave me the office. So that's how I ended up with it. It was tough because I was a newcomer myself. But I've always, as far as SCA goes, I've always been very outgoing and I've always been very curious about the organization and I've always been happy to teach. So maybe that's what they saw in me.
So as chatelaine, what were your first duties? Like, what did you first take on?
Well, obviously welcoming other newcomers. I mean, I was a newcomer myself. So welcoming other newcomers. And because I was a newcomer myself, I did need to figure out exactly what I was doing. I got the garb. So I did some inventorying on the loaner gear. And then it was a matter of, okay, what is it that I need to know and what is it that I need to teach others? So I took on learning the vocabulary. I actually at one point wrote a newcomer's handbook because I needed to figure stuff out myself. And so as I was figuring stuff out, I wrote that stuff down. I wrote a dictionary, kind of a guide. I wrote, and then I just wrote a series of classes like what to take as far as your camping gear, what you need to take with you. How do you act in front of at the time, a brass hat, because I didn't know the terminology myself at the time, but how to act in court and different stuff like that. So eventually it was making sure that other newcomers had gear, making sure that they knew the terminology, and eventually a mentoring program so that anything that they were interested in, I could match them with someone in the barony that also was interested in the same thing or had the knowledge about that and could teach them.
So you
One of the,
hey, it's my turn.
sorry, go ahead.
Toys. So you mentioned making garb, making costumes. So who took you under their wing to teach you how, and did you have any sewing experience before you joined the SCA?
I had some sewing experience. I didn't have a whole lot. And it was actually Her Ladyship Sylvia Scherenhofferen, who was she's I don't think she's playing in the SCA anymore, but I do still know her on Facebook. Her regular name anyway, real world name is Sylvia Tanner. And she actually took me on and taught me, she helped me make garb for my first event. My first actual piece of garb was made by my friend that brought me in. And that was actually an angel tunic. But I got fabric and I made at Sylvia's house on her Bernina. I made a couple of dresses for my first event. What was really funny is that I actually managed to get my finger under the needle and hurt myself. And I cursed at the machine, and she made me apologize to the machine. So that was pretty funny. But you have to learn to respect those Berninas.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So has sewing then, because I mean, obviously you won costuming awards and whatnot since then. Did that become a passion for you, something that you really enjoyed and just kind of pushed through? And
Oh yeah, I love costuming. Right now, honestly, I don't do it as much as I used to, and I am trying to get back into that. But I've gotten into my own head on that. So that's something that I need to work on personally. And when I say I've gotten into my own head, I mean I've gained some weight and I've gotten to a point where I've been kind of like, well, I don't want to make anything because I want to lose weight first. And I talked to a friend this weekend, Karis, who advised me that I need to go ahead and make things for myself now because those things bring me joy. So make it to joy now. And then if I need to alter it later, or when I do shrink out of it, maybe pass it on to someone else and then make something else because it brings me joy to make those kind of things. So I have always been very good at putting patterns and things together. I want to do better as far as making the patterns, period. So that's something that I'm working on learning now.
do you have like a particular period you like to plan, or?
Yeah, I know I don't look like it just because I haven't been working on stuff, but it's actually 16th century, and I'm French, but I don't look French now.
Well, that's a pretty wide timeline, though. But there's 100 years in there. So which time period are you focused on?
Mid 16th century, so between maybe somewhere between like 1540 and 1565, somewhere off in there. So pretty much the mid 16th century in France.
Nice.
And I know that that's kind of an ambiguous time frame because clothing at the time seemed to be really interchangeable. That's been part of my roadblock, I guess you could say, as far as costuming goes, is because you look at that, and I'm starting to realize, and I'm finding out just by talking to other people and through research, that a lot of the styles of that time were kind of interchangeable because everyone took from everyone else. So what they wore in England was also what they wore in France a lot of the times, and what they wore in Italy, for instance, sometimes they also wore in England all too. So a lot of those styles were just kind of not necessarily interchangeable, but that the difference in a lot of them was what they wore on their heads, the headgear.
Hmm.
So you also were poet laureate. Tell me what that means in your kingdom.
So usually every reign, our king and queen do a competition to see who would be basically be the bard and the poet of the kingdom. They have the kingdom bard competition, which I didn't win, but and then they have the poet laureate competition, which I did win. So I won it that year. The king and queen chose me as their poet laureate, so I was inducted into that order, and that's a pretty great order to be in. There's not just really a whole lot of people that are part of that.
So what are the responsibilities of a poet laureate?
Actually, at the time, my responsibility was just to really perform anytime the king and queen asked me during court, and if I was able to. I've written some poems about the kingdom. I don't have them like handy right now, but I did write some poems about the kingdom also.
Was that also a writing competition then? Like, was it have to be an original composition then?
I'm not sure if it had to be original. Mine was, though.
Okay.
Mine was original. I don't have it with me, and I don't have it memorized anymore, but it wasn't kingdom specific. It was really about all of the different peerages and about the people of the SCA as a whole. And it's called I think if I'm remembering right, I titled it Pieces. So I will have to find that and at some point send it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
so
great.
is poetry something that you've also spent time exploring in the SCA?
Not as much as regular bardic, which the singing, not as much as vocal music and as costuming, but poetry is actually something that I've always loved to do. It's just not something I've really explored much in the SCA, mainly because I kind of have a hard time with the meters, with the medieval meters and things like that. I kind of just tend to free write, and sometimes it rhymes and sometimes it doesn't. So it's not something I've actually pursued as far as putting it in for regular competitions or anything. The one that I wrote was modern, but it was about the people in the SCA.
Right. And what about so I didn't know that you were a singer. I didn't remember reading that. So tell me like how you got into singing in the SCA.
I've actually been singing since I was a kid, and I love to sing. So when I came into the SCA, it was just a natural thing for me to gravitate towards music. So I joined the Bardic Guild in my barony, and I went to all of the different Bardic meetings, and they had like a little Bardic book that they gave us, and we would actually work on different music. And so I learned all of those songs, and then I would sing at events, and it got to a point where people were requesting me to come to their fires and sing. And then at one point, I and my then champion, we would actually go around to different camps and sing, just walking around at different events. And we got requested a lot. And it usually turned into what we called the Celeste and Keenan show, because it was Keenan who was my champion at the time, and he has passed on now. But it was Keenan, sing me a song. Celeste, sing me a song. Hey, Keenan, sing this, or Celeste, sing that. And so and eventually we would look at each other, and then we'd look at everyone else, and he'd go, "I'm Keenan," and I'd go, "I'm Celeste," and we go, "Welcome to the Keenan and Celeste show." And he would just, sing. But we were always, of course, happy to let others join in and sing. But usually we just got requested a lot. So it's just something I've always loved and I've always done, is just to sing.
Nice.
Right.
So, I mean, oh, go ahead. So,
Do you go to Gulf Wars?
Usually. I try to. I haven't made it in the past few years, and I was planning on going this year. And I even actually put it on the calendar, but I guess I didn't put it on the calendar in time for work.
Mhm.
And about the time that I was getting ready to make my reservations, I got a message that I was speaking at a workshop during the time that Gulf Force is going on. So
What
I
about
won't be making it
Penzic?
this year.
Do you go to Penzic?
Huh?
Do you go to Penzic?
No, I have not been. I want to go to Penzic sometime.
Should. We would love
It's
to see
not something I've made, but I want to go. I know that there is a gnome board choir,
you. Mhm.
and I would be so excited to be able to join that gnome board choir. I just need to be able to actually get there
Okay, one day.
One
one
day, yeah.
day. One
But
day.
I mean, it's funny because that seems like, when you ask people, a common theme of the show, we ask people, they go, oh, well, I met this person. They told me I should go to this crazy thing. And they wind up going out to Penzic, and then they kind of join the SCA after that. I'm guilty of that myself. But I want to circle back to something. So you create these mentoring programs, you create these newcomer programs. Now, again, we talk about common themes of the show. A lot of times people tell us that their first experience with the SCA isn't necessarily, we'll put it this way, a positive one. They come in, and as a newcomer, they don't feel very welcomed. They feel kind of out of sorts. And maybe fighting isn't necessarily their thing right up front and whatnot. So when you came in, first of all, was there any of that where you kind of felt like, this isn't really my thing because of that? And then how did you, I guess it's like a really multi-layered question. How did you combat that in your own mentoring? And then did your mentors feed into that, or were they kind of problematic? Because a lot of times the people we have on the show are like, yeah, it was tough for me to kind of find a way in because it didn't feel very welcoming.
I actually was lucky not to have that experience because I did have a friend that brought me into the SCA with her, and everyone in Eldron Hills at that time was very welcoming to me when I came in. So, I came in on the planning and gripes meeting. I was welcomed. I was given a piece of garb to wear because Eldron Hills and usually on Steroid does wear garb to their meetings. So I was given loaner garb to wear, and I was welcomed with open arms. I, came in. I sat next to my friend, and the meetings in Eldron Hills at the time, I don't know how about them now, but at the time they were set up like a court. So they opened the court, and they conducted all of the business, and we had a man in the group named Wormy, and he was really funny. So he was the jester, and he would make all kinds of jokes and everything. And Adriana Laurel was the Baroness, and she would look at him and she'd go to sleep, Wormy. And he would cackle and he would fall to the floor. And sometimes he would do a roll, sometimes he'd pretend he was asleep, but he did this all through the meeting, and it just made it a lot of fun. And then just people outside of the meeting just kind of standing around and talking after the meeting was over, even after we were out of the building. It was just a lot of fun. So I didn't actually have the problem of not feeling like I was welcome just because I did belong to such a really great barony. And when I brought other newcomers in, I made sure that they got connected with somebody. And I think that hopefully that combated some of that possible experience. I made sure that they got connected with someone that was excited to help them and to teach them about different aspects of the SCA. And then I made sure, of course, we had the newcomers meeting, and then with Eldron Hills, there were a lot of guild meetings all through the week. So there were so many ways for them to be connected. And I just can't really imagine that anyone would have come in at that time to the barony and felt like there wasn't some kind of connection.
Were your newcomer classes well attended?
They were,
They
yeah.
were. Yeah.
I didn't just have newcomers come to those classes. I had people, that had been in the SCA a long time come to those classes too. And that really helped because if I wasn't able to answer a question, they were able to be there to answer those questions because, as I said, I was a newcomer myself. So luckily those people were there and willing ready and willing to help.
Okay, so now you travel all over the place. You do a myriad amount of jobs. Just, I mean, again, what I mean, it's such a prolific career so far in the SCA. Um, Give me some highlights. Like what, like what are some like so you moved from Eldon Hills, and where did you go next? I'm trying to track it down
I
in the
went to
bio.
Namron.
Namron.
Yeah,
So then you get there. What was your experience kind of coming there? Did you already know people there, or did you
I
have to kind of
did.
start over, or what?
No, I already knew a lot of people there because Northern Ontario is pretty close. So there were Northern regional events and things like that. And my champion at the time actually was from Namron.
Okay.
So I, before I ever came to Namron, I actually knew a lot of people that were there in Namron. But also when I moved to Namron, I did say I had stepped down from the local office, the local Chatelaines office by the time I moved. Of course, I would have had to anyway, but I took the Northern Regional Chatelaines office. So I was actually, by the time I had moved to Namron, I was actually the Northern Regional um, Chatelaine. So I was pretty well known already to everyone in Namron and to everyone even in Wiesenfeuer in that part of Onstera, which is actually now Vinheim.
Okay.
So I didn't really have, yeah.
So I mean, again, like, so you moved, like, you've been so many things that it's like we could ask questions about every one of them. I mean, your time as a herald, your time as a chronicler. I mean, I mean, like, you really are, as far as somebody I would put up, is like the SCA experience. Like I mean, did you ever try to fight? Or is this something you
Yeah,
never?
actually, I did. I discovered I don't like getting hit.
Did you know what I mean? Because again, the martial arts tend to be they're sort of the front man of the band.
Yeah.
When it comes to the SCA, but you really kind of you're kind of the backbone with your experience. So I would have to ask this: do you aspire to a peerage, or do you just really just enjoy the service?
I do eventually want to be a laurel. It would be good to be a pelican too, but honestly, yes, I am an apprentice. I actually feel like I have I have done a lot, right? But the last few years, as far as my arts, I haven't really been doing that as much as I should. And that's something that now that I've stepped down from office, I want to remedy and I want to start doing that again because I love doing that. I love being in office too, but I've just actually stepped down from basically a 5-year term. This is my second 5-year term as Seneschal of Crimson River. So it was time for me to step down. It's time for me to take a break, and I need to control my helium hand there, which is actually pretty hard to do. But given that I'm going to take a break from taking on any actual offices, not meaning I'm going to stop doing service because I can't. That's just not me. But I'm going to take a break from taking on any offices. It's going to give me a chance to really work on my research and on getting my garb and everything together. And I hope that just when the time comes, maybe I can achieve the an invitation to the laurel.
So when you say you're an apprentice, do you apprentice for your storytelling, for your bardic arts, or do you apprentice for your costuming work?
Actually, pretty much all of it because it's more I'm a performance arts and costuming apprentice. But my Laurel is just an expert at a whole lot of stuff. She's just really awesome. So
Well,
yeah.
I think she'd have to be for you to be her apprentice because you do all these various things too. I think that's a great fit. So tell us about the saber thistle.
Sable thistle.
Sable thistle. Yeah, like what did you do for that comp? How did you approach that, and what did you make?
Actually, I made a lot of, and it's not something that I was actually chasing. I just happened to do a lot of sewing because I really like to sew. I really liked costuming. So at the time, even though I didn't have a lot of money, I was still making the garb, and I made a lot of like Tudor type gowns, and yeah, really more like Tudor type gowns, and kind of quasi, I would call them quasi Elizabethan type gowns. They weren't the best, but they were decent. But they were not out of great fabric. They still looked good because I made them look good. But I was using broadcloth and cotton and stuff like that, which isn't the best. But again, they looked good. They could see that I was doing the research, and someone recommended me for that award. I got that, but it wasn't something I was chasing. It was very surprising when I got it. So.
Have you ever competed ANS for your costuming?
I did try a couple of times when I was in Onsteora and Eldorn Hills. I didn't have what I guess they're called dress dummies or something like that. I didn't have a dress stand. So I was competing on body, and at one point someone told me that that if I was going to enter my garb into a competition, that I needed to leave it on the table or display it somehow. And I haven't ever actually entered again. So that is something that I aspire to do once I can really get the right materials, and once I feel that my costuming is at a level that I can actually enter here in Meridies.
What is ANS like in Meridies? I mean, we only know what it's like in the East Kingdom and the Mid-Realm because that's where we're from. And both of them have annual ANS competitions against, a rubric. Is that pretty much the same way it is in Meridies, or is there something different?
No, there's something different. We do have an annual Kingdom Arts and Sciences competition, and they do actually judge you on a scale, on a rubric, and they make comments, and they put their comments and feedback there so that you're able to see that. But we also have regional and local competitions. So the local competitions are just whenever a local group has an event, and they usually have some kind of a theme that they're following, and you can enter your arts and sciences then. But then we have regional fairs, um, usually once a quarter or so, sometimes more than that. We just had an arts and sciences fair at Menhir this past weekend, and then actually not obviously not this coming weekend, but the next weekend there's actually another regional fair, and that's Midwinter Arts and Sciences, and a lot of people take their art and enter it there, their arts and sciences, and enter it there. And then I think the next one isn't until maybe not until May, which is Kingdom ANS. They Oh wait, nope. Iris Fair in April is a regional arts and sciences fair also, but that is a baronial event from my Gladenfeld, but they do host a regional fair also. So it's just you have a lot of different chances, but I really feel like it's pretty intense as far as the arts and sciences here in Meridies, because there are so many talented people, and you're not really competing. I feel like you're not really competing against other people. You're competing against yourself and how you did before, and how you can improve. And it's just, can you get a better score than you got the last time? Because what you're entering isn't necessarily the same. It's like comparing apples and oranges to someone else's art. So you just kind of have to compete against yourself.
Right.
Have you ever taught at ANS events? Have you taught costuming? Have you worked from that side of things before?
I have. When I was in Onsteora, especially, actually, I taught a lot of things like maybe turning mundane patterns. At the time, I knew how to turn mundane patterns into medieval by taking out gores and things like that. So I've taught stuff like that. I taught classes on how to take a piece of fabric and actually make trim out of it, what to look for, and how it can be used. I have taught basic tunic classes. I've taught classes on cloaks and things like that. So just a plethora of different things that I've been able to share my knowledge on.
So the person who recommended you for the show mentioned that he was in the same household as you.
Oh, okay.
So tell us about the household that you're in.
I'm in Black Company, which is a household it's in Onteora. And it's actually been it's been a long time since I've gotten to really enjoy my time with my household. Um, it has been okay. So I joined that household probably, I think, in around 1997 or 1998. So I've been in it a very long time, and I really consider them my family. But there's a Bardic side, um, and then there's a fighter side of the household, and we really just it's a mercenary household, but we work for fabric and cookies, so it's not like a and usually it's not like they go and go out and fight for it's not like they're an Onsteor and they go out and fight for chimeras or something like that. It's more, they'll fight for whoever in Onsteora, for instance, is willing to pay the most cookies and fabric.
Hmm.
But so it's mercenary in a sense that we need some cookies and we need some fabric, but it's not like
Real
what
much.
I would consider, yeah.
So how did you find the household? How did they find you?
Um, in Eldorn Hills, actually. So a lot of the people in the household were in Eldorn Hills, and my friend that actually brought me into the SCA was in Black Company at the time, or well, she still is. It's not like she left, but she was in Black Company, and I just found a group of people there in that household that were always so kind and always so welcoming, and wanted to join. They didn't actually make me go through the pledge process, I guess, because of my champion, I guess, at the time. They didn't make me go through the pledge process, but it was actually kind of like it was just like finding my sisters and brothers. It was really neat. And it's just a pretty wonderful group of people. I miss them. So
Aw.
yeah.
So I mean, it says obviously, and we've talked a little bit about the fact that you stepped down as seneschal and now in your own pursuits. What's like the first, like, this is the project, I have to start this? Because I mean, you're talking about researching music and dance and costuming. Where you think you're going to start? Where do you think it's going to, or has it already started?
It's already started, definitely. I'm working on a tutor gown right now for Ayers Fair. Actually, I'm going to be working on two tutor gowns, but right now my first project is a tutor gown. See what had happened? No, really. What happened was I called my friend Karis. I called her over and asked her to come over my house to go through some of my fabric with me. And this was just a little bit before Christmas. And I told her honestly, I said, I'm kind of stuck in my head. I usually I know what I want fabric to be. I know what I want to make, but I have all of this fabric and I'm just really not sure what I want to do with it. Can you come and help me try to figure that out? So she came over and we looked through some of my fabric. And of course, my favorite color is purple. So I had some purple fabric that she saw that she thought was absolutely beautiful. And she said, you don't have enough of this to make a tutor, but a whole tutor, but we could make the forepart of your gown out of it, and we could maybe make some of your lower sleeves with it. And I think that this could be really good. We just need to find some purple velvet. And I told her, well, I hadn't found purple velvet that I could afford. Purple velvet's not cheap. So she said, hey, let's go look at a thrift store and see if we can find that. So we go to a thrift store, and probably one of the very first things we see is this set of 3 panels, big long panels of purple velvet curtains, cotton velvet. And it was perfect. It was too perfect. And so she bought that for me actually as a Christmas present. And then, and that's what I'm using to make this dress. And it's going to be nice. So I'm excited.
I had that happen. I had to make a costume for a play this summer at Penzic, And I went and found some red, it was polyester, but it looks like satin, and it was perfect
Mm.
for the dress that I needed for my role.
I bet it's awesome.
Isn't that the best? Thrifting is the way to go. So if
Yes.
you give a Scadian one piece of advice on thrifting, what would it be? What can people find like drapes for fabric? What are other things that people can find at thrift stores?
Sheets, actually, sheets work really well. If you go and see if you can find like a big king size sheet, make sure, of course, that it's a cotton sheet. Don't get, if you're looking to make something like a tutor, or you're looking to make maybe a like a chemise or something like that, you don't want satin for that because it'll be hot. But if you can get cotton, um, yeah, cotton sheets definitely for your lining. For different things, you can use it for a chemise. You can use it actually for tunics and things like that. And then sometimes thrift stores will actually have a section where they have actual fabric there that maybe somebody used some of it and they don't need it anymore, or they bought it and they decided they weren't going to use it, so they donate it to the thrift store. And not just Goodwill. Don't just look at Goodwill, look at your mom and pop stores too, because they always have different deals and sometimes they're better. So yeah, definitely look in the fabric section and the sheets of your local thrift stores.
Awesome.
And what would you tell like that was kind of my question, but what could you tell a beginner as far as like when they are making their own thing? What's like a good couple things to decide first before you get into it?
Actually, I really feel like when you are first coming into the SCA, unless you actually have a really strong idea of what you want to study, my advice is to just start out just making a couple of tunics or something like that, or borrowing garb first, and not to actually commit to a particular time period or a particular persona, or even a name, until you have actually had time to come to some events or to come to some meetings and figure out exactly what it is that you are interested in and what you do want to do. Because so many people get into the SCA and they feel like they have to choose a name right away, and they have to choose what their persona is going to be right away, and that just kind of puts stress on people, and maybe it makes it not as enjoyable. So get comfortable with it, and then decide what exactly you want to do.
I'm
Oh.
feeling well, so I'm gonna let you, like earlier, just let you take the lead, Lucas.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna keep going. And I don't mind.
It's horrible because you're making me want to ask all these questions, but I can't formulate them because I can't brain.
So then with your music scholarship, where are you going next with that? Like, what are you looking into? Do you study tutor music as well? Or do you go somewhere else for that?
Really, at the moment, I go somewhere else with that. I do mostly like SCA created music. I have tried to study some of the other just actual medieval music before, and I tend to do that backwards. I find a song and then I get it and I learn it and I get excited about it, and then I go do the research and find out that it's not actually period. So that's something that I need to work on. So my next endeavor as far as music goes will be to learn how to maybe find the music first, and then make sure I have that research and have that complete the complete knowledge of it, I guess you would say,
Hmm.
before I dive into actually learning, putting the effort into learning the song and performing it.
And I get similarly with dance, do you just kind of you kind of love it all, or again, just okay. Because
I love it
it
all.
seems like you started with dance. Your
Yeah.
first experience was that dance so long ago, and then here you are. Um, so have you found that your sort of experience with helping newcomers, that no matter where you've been, the advice and the help has been the same, or did that change by barony, by kingdom, by, you know, what was sort of necessary to bring those people in? Did you even did you get involved in recruiting as well? And if so, how did you work on that?
So I actually do try to help with recruiting. It is different actually from Onsteora to Meridies. With Onsteora, we had like my barony was just really, you know, embracing, and they welcomed everybody. They were kind of, you know, they just kind of drew everybody in. With Meridies, I find that I guess some of the groups, not all of them, but some of them tend to be a little bit more um, insulated, I guess would be the word. And maybe that's because people have come in and they've gotten to know them and then they suddenly go away. But it's not anything that it's not that they're trying to leave anyone out. It's just that they really kind of want to get to know a person first. So you kind of have to, like when I am recruiting people here in Meridians, I kind of have to kind of connect them with a specific person. If it's not me, then someone else, and I can take them and I can say, okay, you know, let me go introduce you to this person and let me introduce you to that person because this person is really great with this and you know this art, or that person can help you get into working with feast or just different things. And I try to introduce people around, and that way they have somebody that they can go to and talk to, and eventually, you know, hopefully feel like they're a part of the group and that they have anyone that they can turn to and talk to.
So when you talk about the mentoring program, did you have the people who are already members of the group? Right. So if somebody wanted to talk about theater or storytelling, they would send people to me. But I can't lie. There's sometimes that I just don't have the energy to mentor somebody and all of that. So would you have the permission of the people that you would send them to ask them to take on that role?
Yeah, so in the mentoring program, what I did was actually take volunteers for people that didn't mind mentoring the newcomers. So whenever they, you know, well, I asked for people, and whenever they volunteered, you know, I would write them down. And then the next newcomer that I had that was interested in the same thing that they were, I would actually assign that person to them and I'd introduce them at the meeting at the time because you know, there was no Facebook at that time.
Right. That's a great idea. That's a really great way to connect people with the people who have the spoons at that time
Yeah.
to work with people. So you're not, we say the saying is, didn't we have a guest, Lucas, who talked about everybody in this SCA is a Chatelaine, but that's not true. That being
Yeah,
a Chatelaine is something very special and different, and we shouldn't I'm not summing it up well, but that's basically was their point, that you can't ask me to be a Chatelaine unless I sign up to be a Chatelaine. What I can do is be warm and welcoming to all. But there's
yeah.
a difference in the role of Chatelaine versus just being nice and friendly.
There is, because you do have to actually be willing to take on that person, because you know that new person that comes in might be really shy, and maybe they're overwhelmed, because a lot of people do get overwhelmed when they're coming into the SCA, because there is a lot to learn. There's a lot of culture there for people to learn, and it can be really overwhelming to hear people refer to, you know, kings and queens, dukes and duchesses, this pointy hat, that pointy hat, this event by name, that group by name, and not know that this award or that award, and not know what you're talking about. And they can feel left out. So it takes a really special person to say to them, hey, come with me and let me show you everything. Let me guide you. Let me help you understand this, and don't hesitate to ask me questions.
Again, you seem, I mean, just with your experience, just we keep asking you to give advice. I've noticed that whole time. So again, if there are Chatelaine and other baronies and other kingdoms and whatnot, if you could impart some wisdom to them, what would that be? What would you tell them? In mentoring them to be mentors, what would you say?
I would actually say to stop and let the newcomers ask questions, because I will say there were times, and there are sometimes still times, when I have been over enthusiastic and overwhelming, and I just want to tell everything. So maybe find out first exactly what it is that they're interested in, how they found out about the SCA and why they came, and then talk to them solely about the different things that different events that are coming up and what you can help them with. Don't encourage them to find a name and a persona right away. Encourage them to take some time to get to know the SCA, and encourage them again also to walk up to people and talk to them, because pretty much around here you really have to put yourself out there. So if they encourage newcomers to get involved with the small group type of things, like maybe the guilds and stuff, if you have them in your group, and encourage them to take them and introduce them to people. Don't just expect them to do everything by themselves.
Great. All right. Well, Celeste, we want to thank you so much. We're nearing the end of our time, so we are going to ask you our standard last question. What can we, as the SCA, as a society, what can we do better?
Well, I already feel that we're working on being more inclusive, but that is actually something that seems to be really tough for people these days. I don't know what it is about it that is making it really hard, but maybe just being more inclusive. I know that we are working on, at least in Meridia's, we are working, and I know in the mid-realm for sure, on having heralds who sign, so sign language heralds. But some of our event sites, for instance, are actually really hard. They're hard to access for people who have physical disabilities. So maybe find more accessible sites, make people feel more welcome. Don't treat people as if they have a handicap or a disability. Treat them as if they have a different ability or a special ability. And maybe just play the game. Be here. Play the game. Don't. Okay, so
I was just saying, you don't have to worry about how you're going to say what you're going to say. If you want to say it, just say it. This is the place. This is the forum. We'll take the heat. No, you won't. We will take the heat.
Do things because you want to do them. Do things because they're fun for you to do. Do things because you're passionate about doing them. Don't do them because you feel obligated to do something. Don't do something because you feel like it's going to get you an award. If you are doing something that you love, the awards will come. They'll come, or people will notice and they'll come, or they won't. But as long as you're happy and you play the game because you're happy, then that should make for a better society for us all.
Great.
It's been so wonderful having you on the show.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Joe, do you want to talk about next week, 2 weeks guest? Because we have.
I don't know, because I've been sick all week. I don't know.
All right, I know we have somebody. We have somebody lined up in 2 weeks.
Somebody in 2 weeks. I don't know who yet, but they're going to be awesome.
We're in our third season. Can you tell? It just rolls. It's effortless now, everybody. It just the machine works without us. It's great. So once again, thank you so much, Celeste, for joining us on Simply SCAdian, no title required. On behalf of my co-host and myself, we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you with a definite guest in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you.